The rain pounded against the motel window, each drop a tiny hammer striking glass. I huddled deeper under the thin blanket, my daughter Emma's warm body pressed against mine, her gentle breathing the only comfort in this damp, musty room that smelled of cigarettes and desperation. 3 days. It had been 3 days since I'd grabbed what little I could stuff into a duffel bag, taken my 6-month-old daughter, and fled from the life I'd built in Chicago. 3 days of truck stops, cash-only motions, and looking over my shoulder. 3 days of wondering if I'd made the biggest mistake of my life, or finally done something right. "We're going to be okay," I whispered to Emma, though she slept peacefully, unaware of our precarious situation. Her chubby cheeks were flushed with sleep, dark eyelashes resting against her skin. She looked so much like her father it made my heart ache. Not Daniel, the man who'd been in my life when I discovered I was pregnant. The man who'd abandoned us both when Emma was barely 2 months old, taking what little savings we had. No, Emma looked like the man whose name I didn't even know when we spent that single, reckless night together nearly 16 months ago. The night that changed everything. I shifted carefully, trying not to disturb Emma as I reached for my phone on the nightstand. Dead. The charger was in the car, and I couldn't bring myself to leave Emma alone even for the few minutes it would take to retrieve it. My paranoia had reached new heights since learning the truth about Emma's father. The truth that sent me running. My fingers traced the faded bruise on my forearm, a souvenir from Daniel's final rage before he vanished with our rent money. I'd thought that was rock bottom, being left alone with an infant, facing eviction, scrambling for extra shifts at the diner where I worked. Then came the dark sedan that began appearing outside our apartment building. The well-dressed men watching me as I hurried to and from work with Emma strapped to my chest, the envelope stuffed with cash that appeared in my mailbox with no note. It was Tanya from the diner who finally told me. Her voice hushed as she pulled me into the storage room during my shift. "That guy you hooked up with last year," she'd said, eyes darting nervously. "The one who left you the big tip, Alessio Vitale. He runs half the city, Leia. The shipping, the clubs, She'd stopped, glancing around as if the walls themselves might be listening. "He's dangerous. And word is he's looking for you." I hadn't believed her at first. The man I remembered had been impeccably dressed. Yes, commanding in presence, certainly. But a mafia boss? It seemed absurd, like something from a movie. But the sedan kept appearing. The men in suits watched with increasing boldness. And then came the flowers. Expensive arrangements delivered to our apartment door with cards signed simply A. The final straw was the photo that appeared in my locker at work, a picture of me holding Emma in the park across from our apartment, taken without my knowledge. On the back, handwritten in elegant script, "She has my eyes." I'd thrown up in the employee bathroom, then called in sick for the remainder of my shift. By nightfall, Emma and I were in a rental car headed south, paid for with the mysterious cash I'd been too afraid to use until that moment. Lightning flashed outside the motel window, illuminating the parking lot. For a split second, I thought I saw a black sedan, and my heart nearly stopped. But the following thunder revealed only an empty lot, rain creating small rivers between the faded parking lines. My stomach growled, reminding me I'd eaten nothing but vending machine snacks since morning. The motel had a small attached diner, and though every instinct screamed to stay hidden, I knew I needed real food to keep up my strength. For Emma, for our escape. I dressed quickly in the bathroom, splashing cold water on my face and staring at my reflection. Dark circles underlined my hazel eyes. My once vibrant auburn hair hung limp and dull. I looked exactly like what I was. A woman on the run. After changing Emma's diaper and bundling her into a warm onesie, I strapped her to my chest in the baby carrier, threw a light jacket over both of us, and stepped outside. The diner was only 20 steps from our room, but the rain soaked through my jacket almost instantly. I hurried, keeping my head down, shoulders hunched against the downpour. The diner was nearly empty, an older couple in one booth, a truck driver at the counter. The waitress, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and hair pulled into a practical bun, smiled as I slid into a booth far from the windows. "Nasty night to be out with a little one," she commented, placing a menu before me. I nodded, not meeting her eyes. Just passing through. She seemed to sense my reluctance to talk and simply asked, "Coffee?" "Please. And some hot water for a bottle if possible." When she returned with my coffee, I ordered the cheapest thing on the menu, a grilled cheese sandwich and tomato soup. As I fed Emma, who had awakened hungry and fussy, the bell above the diner door chimed. I didn't look up. Didn't need to. The atmosphere in the diner shifted instantly, like the air pressure dropping before a storm. Conversations stilled. Even the sounds from the kitchen seemed to quiet. The hair on my arms rose as footsteps approached, measured, unhurried steps that somehow filled the space with tension. A scent reached me, subtle but distinctive, expensive cologne with notes of cedar and something spicy. Familiar. My hands began to tremble so badly I had to set down Emma's bottle. "Leah." His voice was exactly as I remembered it, deep, slightly accented, somehow both gentle and commanding. A voice that had whispered heated words against my skin 16 months ago. I raised my eyes slowly, knowing and dreading what I would see. He stood at the edge of my table, not sitting, not touching anything. Just standing there in a perfectly tailored black coat, droplets of rain beating on the wool before falling to the linoleum floor. His dark hair was damp, curling slightly at the temples. His face, that handsome, dangerous face with its sharp cheekbones and strong jaw, was composed, revealing nothing. But his eyes. Those intense dark eyes were fixed on Emma, studying her with such naked emotion it made my breath catch. "You shouldn't have run," he said quietly. Behind him stood 2 men, positioned near the door, their stances alert, hands concealed inside their jackets. The waitress had disappeared. The other patrons seemed to be finding reasons to leave. "How did you find me?" My voice emerged as a whisper. Alessio Vitale, the man whose child I carried, whose world I'd unwittingly entered, finally looked directly at me. "You cannot hide what belongs to me, Leah." My arms tightened protectively around Emma. "We don't belong to anyone." Something flickered in his expression. Amusement, perhaps, or disbelief. "The child in your arms says otherwise." He slid into the booth across from me, his movements fluid and controlled. Up close, I could see the fatigue in his face, the slight redness in his eyes. He'd been searching, probably hadn't slept. "You and the child are mine," he spoke softly, but each word landed like a stone. "This foolish running ends now." My heart hammered against my ribs. Emma squirmed against me, sensing my distress. "I didn't know who you were," I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. "When I found out, you panicked." He finished for me, a hint of disappointment in his tone. "You believed rumors and fled rather than coming to me directly." "Coming to you?" I hissed, leaning forward. "I don't even know you." "One night, Alessio. We spent one night together." His eyes darkened. "A night that created a life. My blood, my legacy." His gaze returned to Emma, who had turned her head at the sound of his voice. Their eyes met. The same shape, the same deep brown with flecks of amber. Something passed between them, a recognition that sent chills through me. "She's beautiful," he said. And for a moment, the dangerous Mafia boss disappeared, replaced by something far more frightening. A father seeing his child for the first time. My soup arrived, delivered by a nervous-looking busboy who scurried away without a word. Alessio pushed it toward me. "Eat. You look exhausted." The normalcy of the gesture, pushing soup toward me as if we were simply a couple having dinner, made the situation all the more surreal. "I'm not going anywhere with you." "Yes, you are." No threat colored his words. He stated it as simple fact. "The question is whether you walk out of here with dignity or need to be assisted." I glanced toward the door, where his men stood watching. The diner had emptied completely now. Even the waitress was nowhere to be seen. "What do you want from us?" I asked, though I already suspected the answer. Alessio leaned back, his gaze never leaving my face. "I want what any man wants when he discovers he has a child. I want to protect what's mine. I want my family under my roof, safe from the dangers of this world." "Family?" I repeated incredulously. "We're not family. You don't even know her name." Something dangerous flashed in his eyes. "Tell me." "Emma," I whispered, hating how intimate it felt to share this with him. Her name is Emma. He reached across the table, not toward Emma, but toward me. His fingertips brushed my cheek so lightly I might have imagined it. Emma and Leia Vitale. I jerked back. That's not our name. His smile was cold. It is now. Outside, lightning cracked again, thunder following immediately. The lights in the diner flickered and Emma began to cry, startled by the noise. Without thinking, I rocked her, making soothing sounds. When I looked up, Alessio was watching us, something possessive and primal in his gaze. You have two choices, Leia, he said softly. Continue running, hungry, afraid, alone, or come with me. Give your daughter the protection of my name, my resources, my power. She will want for nothing, neither will you. And if I refuse, his expression hardened, don't mistake my patience for weakness. I've allowed this game of chase because I wanted to see what kind of mother you are. You've proven yourself resourceful, protective, good qualities, but the game is over. As if on cue, headlights swept across the diner windows as vehicles pulled into the parking lot. More men, more of his people. Emma continued to whimper, hungry and unsettled. I looked down at her tiny face, then back at the man who had helped create her. In his eyes, I saw determination, power, and something else, a longing that matched the ache in my own chest for stability, for safety. One condition, I heard myself say, surprising us both. I'm not your prisoner. If I ever want to leave, you won't. He interrupted, certainty ringing in his voice. If I ever want to leave, I repeated firmly, you let us go. For a long moment he said nothing, just studied me with those penetrating eyes. Then slowly, he extended his hand across the table, palm up, an offer, a contract. We have an understanding, he said, though something in his expression told me he had no intention of ever letting us walk away. My hand hovered above his, trembling. Everything in me screamed that this was wrong, dangerous, a deal with the devil. But Emma was cold and hungry. I was exhausted and out of options. And somewhere, in a place I refused to acknowledge, a part of me remembered the tenderness in this dangerous man's touch 16 months ago. I placed my hand in his fingers closed around mine, warm and strong. You've made the right choice, cara mia, he murmured. Now come. It's time to go home. As he helped me from the booth, his hand at the small of my back, I knew with absolute certainty that I had just changed our lives forever. For better or worse, Emma and I now belonged to Alessio Vitale, the Mafia boss who'd claimed us both with 5 simple words that echoed in my mind like a prison sentence. You and the child are mine. The drive from the motel was a blur of rain-slicked roads and silent tension. I sat in the back of a sleek black SUV, Emma cradled against me, Alessio beside us. His men had retrieved my meager belongings from the motel room, and my rental car had been taken care of, whatever that meant. 2 other vehicles flanked us, one ahead, one behind. A mobile fortress protecting the Mafia boss and his newly claimed family. Neither of us spoke as the miles passed. I stared out the window, watching unfamiliar towns give way to darkened countryside. Emma had fallen asleep, her tiny fingers curled around one of mine. Occasionally, I felt Alessio's gaze on us, studying, assessing, but I couldn't bring myself to meet his eyes. My mind raced with questions and doubts. Had I made the right decision? Was I trading one form of danger for another? We're heading to my estate outside of Chicago, he finally said, breaking the heavy silence. It's private, secure, I nodded stiffly, still not looking at him. How long have you known? About Emma. 3 months. His voice was low, controlled. One of my associates saw you with her at a hospital. He noticed the resemblance. I remembered that day. Emma had a high fever, and I'd been frantic with worry. I hadn't noticed anyone watching us. And you've been following me since then? Protecting you, he corrected. Learning about you. About her. Daniel Mercer's desertion presented an opportunity. I had planned to approach you more gradually. The casual mention of Daniel's full name sent a chill through me. What else did he know about my life? Did you have something to do with Daniel leaving? I asked, suddenly suspicious. Alessio's lips curved into a cold smile that didn't reach his eyes. Would it trouble you if I did? The man stole from you, left you and a child he believed was his, to struggle alone. I turned away, unwilling to admit that he had a point. That doesn't answer my question. I suggested he might find opportunities elsewhere, Alessio replied after a pause, and provided incentive for him to pursue them immediately. The clinical way he described what was almost certainly a threat made my stomach turn. Yet a traitorous part of me felt vindicated. Daniel had abandoned us without a backward glance, leaving me to face eviction notices and empty cupboards. You should have come to me when you discovered you were pregnant, Alessio said, a hint of accusation in his tone. I finally looked at him, disbelief warming my veins. I didn't know your last name, let alone who you really were. You never contacted me after that night. What was I supposed to do? Put up flyers around Chicago? Seeking well-dressed mystery man from hotel bar. Something like regret flickered across his features. An oversight I've come to regret. That night was unexpected. I was in Chicago for business, not pleasure. I remembered that night clearly, the upscale hotel bar where I'd been covering a shift for a sick coworker. Alessio sitting alone at the corner of the bar, watching everyone who entered with calculated attention. How his focus had shifted entirely to me when I'd approached to take his order. The electricity that had sparked between us with each glance, each accidental brush of fingers as I served his drinks. You pursued me, I reminded him quietly, his eyes darkened with remembrance. And you responded. Heat crept into my cheeks at the memory of how eagerly I had indeed responded, accepting his invitation to sit with him after my shift ended, listening, captivated, as he spoke of Italy, art, and philosophy. I'd been drawn to his intensity, his complete attention when I spoke, as if my mundane life as a struggling bartender somehow fascinated him. When he'd invited me to his room, I'd said yes without hesitation, throwing caution aside for one night of passion, with a stranger whose name, Alessio, just Alessio, rolled off my tongue like honeyed wine. The SUV slowed, turning onto a private road flanked by tall iron gates that opened automatically as we approached. Security cameras tracked our progress, and I glimpsed armed guards positioned discreetly among the trees that lined the winding driveway. Welcome to Villa Vitale, Alessio said as the estate came into view. The house, mansion, really, rose from the darkness like something from another world. Stone and glass formed a modern fortress, lights glowing warmly from within. Fountains adorned the circular driveway, and manicured gardens stretched into the shadows. It was beautiful, imposing, and utterly alien to my experience. This is where you live? My voice sounded small, even to my own ears. This is where we live now, he corrected. The SUV came to a stop at the front entrance. Before the driver could exit, Alessio was opening his own door and coming around to my side, an unexpected courtesy that caught me off guard. He offered his hand, and I took it hesitantly, clutching Emma to my chest with my other arm as I stepped out. The rain had stopped, leaving behind a heavy mist that clung to everything. The air smelled clean, earthy. So different from the city smog I was accustomed to. Under different circumstances, I might have found it peaceful. Alessio's hand remained at the small of my back as he guided us inside. The entryway opened into a soaring foyer with marble floors and a sweeping staircase. Art that looked museum-worthy adorned the walls, and crystal chandeliers cast warm light over everything. A woman appeared, older, with silver-streaked dark hair and a stern expression that softened when she saw Emma. Sophia, Alessio addressed her, prepare the East Wing suite and bring whatever is needed for the baby. Sophia nodded, her curious eyes taking in every detail of my disheveled appearance before she disappeared down a hallway. My housekeeper, Alessio explained. She's been with my family since I was a child. You can trust her. Trust. The word hung between us, weighted with implication. I didn't trust anyone in this strange new world, least of all the dangerous man beside me. I'd like to feed Emma and put her down, I said, needing a moment to collect myself, to process the dramatic turn my life had taken in the span of hours. Of course. He gestured toward the staircase. I'll show you to your rooms. The suite was larger than the entire apartment Emma and I had shared in Chicago. A luxurious bedroom opened into a sitting area with a fireplace already lit against the evening chill. Beyond that, a bathroom with a tub I could have swum in. Most surprising was the adjoining nursery, fully furnished with a cherrywood crib, changing table, and rocking chair. "You've been planning this," I realized aloud, taking in the brand new baby items still tagged with expensive boutique labels. Alessio stood in the doorway watching me. "I told you. I protect what's mine." The possessiveness in his tone sent conflicting emotions through me. Outrage at being considered a possession, yet a treacherous sense of security I hadn't felt in months. "I need to feed her," I said again, needing him to leave. He nodded, lingering just a moment longer. "Sophia will bring you dinner. Rest tonight. Tomorrow we'll discuss arrangements." "Arrangements?" I echoed. "For your new life here." His tone suggested this was non-negotiable. "Good night, Leah." After he left, I sank onto the edge of the enormous bed, still cradling Emma, who had begun to stir. The reality of my situation crashed over me in waves. I was now living in the home of a Mafia boss who believed he owned us. A man whose business I knew nothing about, except that it was dangerous and likely illegal. A man who had tracked me down with terrifying efficiency. A man who was Emma's father. I looked down at my daughter's face, at the features that echoed Alessio's. She deserved more than the struggling existence I'd been providing. Here, she would have safety, comfort, opportunities I could never give her on my own. But at what cost? True to Alessio's word, Sophia appeared with a tray of food, a bowl of pasta that smelled divine, fresh bread, a glass of wine I wouldn't touch. She also brought baby formula, diapers, and soft new clothes for Emma. "The Signore has waited for this day," she said, her Italian accent thick as she placed the tray on a side table. "To have his child home." I looked up sharply. "Did he tell you that?" Sophia's smile was knowing. "He didn't need to. I raised him from a boy. I know when Alessio Vitale wants something." She touched Emma's cheek gently. "She has his eyes, his mother's chin." After she left, I fed and changed Emma, marveling at how contentedly she settled into the luxurious new crib, surrounded by softness she'd never known. I ate mechanically, the pasta flavorful but tasteless to my anxiety-numbed tongue, and then took a long, hot shower, washing away days of fear and flight. Clean, dressed in silk pajamas Sophia had provided, I stood by the window, looking out at the moonlit grounds. Somewhere beyond the manicured gardens and ornamental pools lay gates, guards, the boundary between this gilded cage and freedom. I wondered if I would ever cross that threshold again of my own volition. A soft knock at the door startled me. When I opened it, I found not Alessio, but a different man. Tall, lean, with observant eyes that assessed me in one quick sweep. "Marco Russo," he introduced himself with a slight nod. "Head of security. I wanted to introduce myself and provide this." He extended a cell phone, programmed with necessary contacts. "My number is first on the list, should you need anything." I took it hesitantly. "Does it track my location?" The corner of his mouth lifted slightly. "Of course it does, Ms. Morrison. But that's primarily for your protection." He glanced past me toward the nursery. "The boss has made your safety and the child's his highest priority." "Does everyone in his organization know about us now?" Marco's expression gave nothing away. "Only those who need to. The boss values privacy, especially regarding family." The way he emphasized the word family made it clear that's what I was now considered, whether I accepted it or not. After he left, I checked on Emma one last time, then slipped into the massive bed, sinking into luxury that should have been comforting but only intensified my sense of unreality. I lay awake for hours, mind racing with escape plans I knew were futile, alternatives that didn't exist. Eventually, exhaustion claimed me, and I fell into a deep sleep. I woke to sunlight streaming through windows whose curtains I'd forgotten to close and the unfamiliar sound of Emma cooing contentedly, rather than crying for her morning bottle. Disoriented, I sat up quickly, memories of the previous day flooding back. Emma wasn't in her crib. Panic surged through me as I rushed to the nursery, heart pounding, only to stop short at the threshold. Alessio sat in the rocking chair, Emma in his arms. He was speaking to her softly in Italian, his voice gentle in a way I hadn't heard before. Emma gazed up at him, utterly fascinated by this new person, her tiny hand wrapped around his finger. Father and daughter, meeting properly for the first time. I must have made some sound, because Alessio looked up, his expression unguarded for a brief moment, before his usual composure returned. She was awake, he said, as if I had demanded an explanation. Sophia heard her on the monitor and came for me. I approached cautiously, unsure of my place in this tableau. She usually cries in the morning. She didn't cry, he replied, a hint of pride in his voice. She just looked around, curious. The tenderness in his interaction with Emma caught me off guard. This was the same man who had tracked us across states, who commanded fear with his mere presence, who ran a criminal empire. Yet here he sat, completely enraptured by a 6-month-old girl who shared his blood. May I? I held out my arms, needing to reassure myself she was real. Safe. Alessio passed her to me carefully, his fingers brushing against mine in the exchange. She's perfect, he said, watching as I settled her against my shoulder. You've done well with her, Leah, despite difficult circumstances. The unexpected praise warmed something inside me, a starved place that had received little validation in months of struggling alone. We need to talk, he continued, rising from the chair with fluid grace, about expectations, arrangements, your place here. The warmth evaporated. My place? His dark eyes held mine. Your future. Emma's future. Our future together. You said if I ever wanted to leave. And I meant it, he interrupted smoothly. But I think you'll find that staying offers advantages worth considering. Come downstairs when you're ready. We'll have breakfast. After he left, I changed and fed Emma, dressing her in one of the new outfits Sophia had brought, a soft pink romper that probably cost more than a week's worth of my former salary. I chose simple jeans and a sweater for myself from the closet, which I discovered was filled with new clothing in exactly my size. The thoroughness of Alessio's preparations unsettled me deeply. Downstairs, I followed the sound of voices to a sun-drenched breakfast room where floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked a stone terrace and gardens beyond. Alessio sat at the head of a glass table, speaking in rapid Italian to a man whose expensive suit and alert posture marked him as something more than a household employee. They fell silent when I entered, Emma in my arms. Buongiorno, Alessio said, rising. He gestured to the man beside him. Leah, this is Vito Calabresi, my consigliere. The older man, Vito, studied me with undisguised curiosity. So this is the mother of the Vitale heir. His accent was thicker than Alessio's, his tone neutral but assessing. Bentornata a casa, signora. Welcome home, he'd said, as if I belonged here, as if this grand estate with its guards and gates were anything but a beautiful prison. Please sit. Alessio indicated the chair to his right. A high chair had been placed beside it, new, expensive, with Emma's name engraved on a silver plate at the back. Another sign of how thoroughly my daughter was being claimed by the Vitale legacy. I settled Emma into the high chair, acutely aware of both men watching our every movement. Sophia appeared with coffee, fresh fruit, and pastries still warm from the oven. The domesticity of the scene felt surreal against the backdrop of my circumstances. Vito excused himself shortly after, with a respectful nod to Alessio and another calculating glance at me and Emma. When we were alone, I finally asked the question that had kept me awake much of the night. What exactly do you want from me, Alessio? He took a slow sip of his coffee, considering me over the rim of the cup. Directness. I appreciate that quality in you. Setting the cup down, he continued. What I want is simple. I want my daughter raised in my home with all the benefits of my name and protection. I want her to know her heritage, her family. And my role in this arrangement, I pressed. You are her mother, he replied, as if it were obvious. Your role is to care for her, nurture her, and gradually adapt to your new position in my household. As what? Your prisoner? Your employee? Something dangerous flashed in his eyes. As my partner in raising our child, as the mother of the Vitale heir, he leaned forward slightly. Make no mistake, Leah. In my world, That position carries significant status and privilege. I laughed, a hollow sound. I didn't ask for status or privilege. I was managing on my own. Were you? His tone was skeptical. Working double shifts at that diner? Living in an apartment with faulty wiring and black mold in the bathroom? One illness away from financial ruin? He shook his head. That's not the life my daughter deserves. Nor is it the life I want for her mother. The accuracy of his assessment stung. He'd clearly had me investigated thoroughly. Here, he continued, gesturing to encompass the estate. Emma will have the finest education, culture, opportunities. She will want for nothing. Neither will you. In exchange for what? I challenged. There's always a price. Alessio's expression softened fractionally. In exchange for allowing me to be her father. For becoming part of my family. He paused, studying my face. And eventually, perhaps, for becoming my wife. In more than name only. The coffee I'd just swallowed threatened to come back up. Your wife? We barely know each other. A situation easily remedied with time, he replied calmly. We share a child, Leah. In my family, that means something sacred. Marriage would legitimize Emma fully and cement your position. I'm not a possession to be positioned, I snapped, anger finally breaking through my fear. And I didn't agree to any of this when I got into your car last night. I agreed not to run, that's all. Rather than anger, my outburst seemed to please him. He smiled. A real smile that transformed his severe features into something dangerously attractive. Passion. Another quality I admire in you. It's what drew me to you that night at the hotel. Heat rushed to my cheeks at the memory his words evoked. I looked away, focusing on Emma, who was happily mashing a piece of banana between her fingers. I won't be forced into marriage, Alessio. Not even for Emma's security. Force has never been my intention, he said, his voice softer now. I prefer willing participation in all aspects of my life. The subtle emphasis sent an unwelcome shiver down my spine. For now, I ask only that you stay, that you give this arrangement a chance. Get to know me as Emma's father. Let me prove that I can be what both of you need. His reasonable tone, the absence of threats or demands, made it harder to maintain my defensive anger. And if I still want to leave after getting to know you, then you may go, as we agreed. His expression remained unreadable. Though I think you'll find that difficult once you see what life here can offer. After breakfast, Alessio gave me a tour of the estate, or rather, the parts of it he deemed appropriate for me to see. The main house was even larger than I'd initially realized, with multiple wings, a library filled with rare books, a music room containing a grand piano, formal and informal living areas, and an indoor pool housed in a glass conservatory. The west wing contains my offices, he explained, as we passed a corridor guarded by two men, who nodded respectfully as we passed. That area is off limits, unless I invite you specifically. I understood the unspoken message. His business dealings would remain separate from our domestic arrangement. In some ways, it was a relief. The less I knew about his criminal activities, the better. The grounds were equally impressive. Manicured gardens, a stable with sleek thoroughbreds, tennis courts, and a guest house larger than any home I'd ever lived in. Throughout the tour, Alessio remained close beside me, occasionally placing his hand at the small of my back to guide me, each touch a subtle reminder of his claim. Emma, strapped to my chest in the baby carrier, seemed to enjoy the excursion, her eyes wide as she took in the new surroundings, occasionally reaching out toward colorful flowers or interesting textures. She's curious, Alessio observed, pleasure evident in his voice when Emma grabbed for a bright bloom. Intelligent. She takes everything in. She's always been like that, I said, unable to keep the pride from my own tone. Even as a newborn, she seemed to be studying the world, like her father, he murmured, reaching out to stroke Emma's cheek with a gentleness that continued to surprise me. The tender moment was interrupted by the appearance of Marco, the security chief I'd met the previous night, approaching with purposeful strides. "Scusi, boss," he said, his expression professionally blank. "That matter we discussed requires your attention." Alessio's demeanor shifted instantly, warmth replaced by cold authority. "I'll be there momentarily," To me, he added, "Duty calls. Sophia will help you with anything you need. We'll continue our conversation at dinner." As he walked away with Marco, I caught fragments of their low conversation. Something about a shipment and missing product. A reminder of exactly who I was dealing with. Left to my own devices, I returned to the house, wandering the permitted areas with Emma. In the library, I discovered a children's section with books in multiple languages. In the casual family room, I found a playpen stocked with age-appropriate toys. Even the pool area had a specially designed infant float chair. Every space had been prepared for Emma's arrival. For our arrival. "He's been planning this for weeks," I murmured to Emma, who babbled happily as she examined a colorful stuffed elephant that had been placed in the playpen. "Months, actually." Sophia's voice came from the doorway, startling me. She entered with a tray of tea and small sandwiches. When he first learned about the bambina, he was transformed. I accepted the tea she offered, curiosity overcoming my wariness. "What do you mean?" Sophia settled into an armchair, her efficient movements betraying years of practiced service. Signor Vitale has always been serious, responsible, dedicated to family business, family honor. But something was missing. She made a gesture toward her chest. Heart, joy. Then came news of the child, his child, and everything changed. "He sent men to watch us," I said, still unable to reconcile the tenderness Alessio showed Emma with the calculated surveillance he'd ordered. "To protect you," Sophia corrected firmly. "Chicago is not always safe, especially for the mother of a Vitale." I didn't know who he was then. I didn't know Emma was his. Sophia's expression softened, but he knew. And in our world, in his position, knowledge brings responsibility. She glanced toward Emma, who had dozed off clutching the elephant. "The Signore has enemies. Many would use his child, or his child's mother, to hurt him." A chill ran through me at her matter-of-fact tone. "Is that why we're here? Because it's too dangerous for us to be anywhere else? You are here because you belong here," she replied simply. "With him. As a family." The conviction in her voice unsettled me. "We're not a family, Sophia. We're strangers connected by one night and its consequences," she smiled knowingly. "Families begin somewhere, no? Some begin with arranged marriages, some with politics, some with love at first sight. Yours began with passion and now continues with a child. Not so unusual in our history." Our history. The casual inclusion of me in the Vitale legacy was presumptuous, yet I couldn't deny the reality. Emma was a Vitale, whether I accepted it or not, and as her mother, I was inextricably linked to this world now. "Tell me about him," I found myself asking. "Who is he really?" Sophia considered this, her weathered hands smoothing her apron. "Alessio was born to responsibility. His father, God rest his soul, was a hard man, traditional, demanding. When he died 5 years ago, Alessio took control of everything at just 27. He expanded the legitimate businesses, shipping, real estate, the nightclubs, made peace with old enemies, modernized." She carefully avoided mentioning the illegal aspects of the Vitale empire. I noticed. "And personal relationships?" I pressed, needing to understand the man who now controlled my life. Sophia's expression grew guarded. "There have been women, of course. A man in his position, but no one significant, no one he brought home." Her eyes met mine directly, "until you." The implication hung in the air between us. According to Sophia, I was the first woman Alessio had deemed important enough to bring into his private sanctuary. The thought should have flattered me, perhaps. But it only intensified my unease. What did he really want from me? A convenient mother for his heir, or something more? The day passed slowly as I adjusted to my new surroundings. I spent time with Emma in the various spaces prepared for her, marveling at the thoughtfulness of the arrangements while simultaneously resenting the presumption behind them. Sophia brought lunch, offered assistance with Emma, and generally played the role of helpful grandmother figure, a role I sensed she had embraced wholeheartedly. By evening, Emma was fussy, overwhelmed by the day's changes. I was bathing her in the luxurious nursery bathroom when Alessio appeared in the doorway, his imposing frame filling the space. "I've been called away on business," he announced, watching as I cradled Emma in a towel softer than any I'd ever owned. I'll be gone overnight. I tried to hide my relief at the prospect of a night without his overwhelming presence. I see. He approached, kneeling beside the bath to be at eye level with me. Marco and his team will remain on the property. You'll be perfectly safe. His tone made it clear this was also a warning. I was still being watched. Escape still impossible. I understand, I said quietly, focusing on drying Emma rather than meeting his intense gaze. Do you? His hand reached out, gently tilting my chin up until I was forced to look at him. I want you to be comfortable here, Leah. To feel at home. But don't mistake my consideration for weakness. I never would, I replied, the heat of his fingers against my skin sending unwelcome warmth through my veins. Something shifted in his expression. Satisfaction, perhaps, at my acknowledgement of his power. Good. His eyes moved to Emma, who was watching him with curious eyes. May I? I hesitated, then nodded, allowing him to take her. He cradled her with surprising confidence, speaking soft Italian words as he carried her to the changing table. I watched in silent amazement as the dangerous Mafia boss competently diapered and dressed his daughter in pajamas, handling her with a tenderness that contradicted everything I thought I knew about him. You've done this before, I observed. I have nieces, nephews, he replied without looking up. Family is everything to me, Leah, remember that. After settling Emma in her crib, he turned to me, his expression serious. While I'm gone, consider the future I'm offering you both. A life of security, luxury, respect. Emma will be educated at the finest schools, travel the world, inherit a legacy. You will be treated as my equal partner, lacking for nothing. He stepped closer, his voice dropping. Think about what you left behind. The struggle, the uncertainty, the fear. Compare it to what you could have here. Before I could respond, he leaned in, his lips brushing against my cheek in a gesture too intimate for our arrangement, yet too restrained for our history. Buonanotte, cara mia, he murmured, his breath warm against my skin. Then he was gone, leaving me standing in the nursery, my cheek burning where his lips had touched, my mind swirling with conflicting emotions, and the treacherous possibility that perhaps, just perhaps, he was right about the future he offered. Alessio's absence should have brought relief, but instead, the vast estate felt eerily quiet without his commanding presence. I spent that night and the following day exploring my gilded cage more thoroughly, pushing boundaries, testing limits. The security was seamless and ever-present. Guards patrolled the perimeter, cameras monitored the grounds. When I ventured too close to the front gates during a morning walk with Emma in a pram that probably cost more than my old car, Marco materialized beside me, offering a polite escort back toward the gardens. His message was clear without a single threat being uttered. I could roam within defined boundaries, but not beyond them. I learned more about the household too. Besides Sophia, there was a full staff, a chef who prepared meals that made my diner cooking look pitiful, groundskeepers who maintained the immaculate gardens, housekeepers who moved silently through rooms, keeping everything pristine. All regarded me with a mixture of curiosity and deference. To them, I wasn't a captive. I was the mother of the heir, deserving of respect. Signora, is there anything special you'd like prepared for dinner? The chef, Johnny, asked when I wandered into the kitchen that afternoon. He spoke as if I were the lady of the house, not a woman who had been brought here against her will just days ago. I'm not the signora, I corrected reflexively. Johnny exchanged a glance with Sophia, who was preparing a bottle for Emma. As you wish, he said, though his tone suggested he considered this a temporary semantic detail. But my question remains. What would you enjoy for dinner? The normality of the question, so mundane, so domestic, nearly broke me. Tears threatened, and I blinked them back furiously. Whatever you'd normally prepare is fine. That evening, alone in the formal dining room with Emma dozing in a bassinet beside me, I picked at an exquisite meal while contemplating my situation. The reality was setting in. Alessio Vitale had claimed us both, and he had the power to enforce that claim indefinitely. My only choices were to accept my new reality, or to fight it and risk what, exactly? What would he do if I continued to resist? Sophia entered as I was finishing, Emma beginning to stir with hunger. "The signore called," she announced. "He will return tomorrow morning. He asked after you both." I nodded, lifting Emma from the bassinet. "Did he say anything else?" Sophia hesitated, then, "He said to tell you he's arranged a surprise. Something to make you feel more at home. A surprise. From a man who had effectively kidnapped me and my child. The incongruity might have been amusing under different circumstances." "Thank you, Sophia," I said, cradling Emma against my shoulder as she began to fuss. The older woman watched me with knowing eyes. "You fight yourself, signora. I see it. The resistance, but also the curiosity. The fear, but also the attraction." Heat flooded my cheeks. "You're mistaken. I raised Alessio from a boy. I've worked for the Vitale family for 40 years, she replied, unperturbed by my denial. "I know what I see." I returned to my suite, unsettled by Sophia's perception. Was I truly fighting my own feelings? Did some part of me want this strange new life Alessio was constructing around us? The memory of our night together 16 months ago rose unbidden. His intense focus on my pleasure, the way he'd whispered my name against my skin, how completely he'd made me feel desired, valued. One night that had branded itself into my memory even before I knew its consequences. That was just physical, I told myself firmly as I prepared for bed. Attraction, chemistry, nothing more. But Sophia's words lingered, and I slept fitfully, dreams filled with Alessio's dark eyes and commanding presence. I woke to the sound of Emma's contented babbling and sunlight streaming through windows whose curtains I'd forgotten to close. For a moment, I thought perhaps Alessio had returned and was with her, as he had been yesterday morning. But when I entered the nursery, I found Emma alone in her crib, playing with the mobile above her head, a custom creation of crystal stars and moons that caught the light in prismatic rainbows. After feeding and dressing her, I carried Emma downstairs, following the scent of coffee to the breakfast room. I stopped short in the doorway, my breath catching. Alessio sat at the table, reading something on a tablet, a cup of espresso at his elbow. But it wasn't his presence that stunned me. It was the other person seated across from him. "Tanya!" I gasped. My friend from the diner looked up, her familiar face breaking into a relieved smile as she jumped up and rushed toward me. "Leah! Thank God you're okay." She embraced me awkwardly, mindful of Emma between us, then pulled back to scan my face. "Are you all right? When you disappeared, I was so worried. And then these men came asking questions, and I'm fine," I assured her, though the word felt inadequate for my complicated situation. I glanced at Alessio, who watched our reunion with calculated interest. "What are you doing here?" "Mr. Vitale sent a car for me this morning. Said you needed a friendly face." Tanya's eyes darted nervously to Alessio, then back to me. "He offered me a job here, as your assistant," he said, "to help with Emma and keep you company." I turned to Alessio, understanding dawning. This was the surprise Sophia had mentioned. He'd brought my only real friend to the estate, ostensibly as comfort for me, but more likely as another way to ensure I stayed. Tanya's presence was both a gift and a subtle threat. See how generous I can be. See how easily I can find the people who matter to you. "You look surprised, Kara," Alessio said, rising from his chair with fluid grace. "Sophia mentioned you seemed lonely. Ms. Chen was most concerned about you when we spoke. It seemed a mutually beneficial arrangement. You offered her a job?" I kept my voice carefully neutral, aware of Tanya's curious gaze bouncing between us. "With considerable compensation and accommodations in the guest house," he confirmed, approaching to place a light kiss on my cheek in greeting. The casual intimacy of the gesture, performed in front of Tanya, sent heat flooding my face. "Good morning, Emma," he added, his voice softening as he addressed our daughter. Emma responded with a happy gurgle, reaching for him with pudgy hands. Without hesitation, I transferred her to his arms, watching as his severe features transformed with genuine pleasure. "You've had breakfast?" he asked Tanya, who nodded quickly. "Yes, thank you, Mr. Vitale. Everything's been very generous." "Alessio, please," he corrected smoothly, though I noted he didn't extend the same familiarity to her that his tone suggested when he addressed me. "Leah, eat. You must be hungry." We have much to discuss today." The command was gentle but unmistakable. I sat, accepting the coffee Sophia appeared to pour, while Alessio continued holding Emma, speaking to her softly in Italian. The domestic tableau felt surreal. A mafia boss cradling his infant daughter, while his effectively kidnapped baby mama sat across from her friend, who had been brought in as an unwitting jailer. "I'll give you two some time to catch up," Alessio said after a few minutes, transferring Emma back to me. "Tanya, Sophia will show you the grounds and your accommodations after breakfast. Leah, I'll find you in the library at 11. There are matters we need to discuss." After he left, Tanya leaned forward, lowering her voice despite the fact that we were alone. "Leah, what the hell is going on? 1 minute you're taking extra shifts to make rent. The next you're living in a palace with freaking Alessio Vitale, and he's acting like he owns me," I supplied grimly. "Like he's your husband," she corrected, eyebrows raised. "And Emma's father," I sighed, setting Emma in the high chair where Sophia had left a teething biscuit for her. "He is Emma's father. That night last year at the Palmer House Hotel, that was him." Tanya's eyes widened. "The guy who left the crazy tip? Holy shit, Leah. You never told me it was Vitale." "I didn't know who he was," I admitted. "Not until you told me that day at the diner. That's why I ran. I was scared." "But he found you." It wasn't a question. I nodded. 3 nights ago, he just appeared, said Emma and I belonged to him, that we were coming home. I swallowed hard. "I didn't have a choice, Tanya. He had men everywhere." Tanya reached across the table, squeezing my hand. "Are you okay? Has he hurt you? Because job or no job, I'll help you get out of here if—" "He hasn't hurt us," I interrupted. "Just the opposite. Everything here is perfect, designed for Emma's comfort and safety. He's attentive, generous." I hesitated, then admitted, "and terrifying. Because of who he is, what he does. Because of how completely he's taken over our lives," I replied. "He talks about me becoming his wife, about Emma inheriting his legacy. He's planned our entire future without consulting me." Tanya sat back, processing. "But he's not forcing you? Physically, I mean?" I shook my head. "No. He says he wants my willing participation, that I'm free to leave if I choose." I laughed humorlessly, though every aspect of this place makes that practically impossible. "And do you want to leave?" Tanya asked carefully, studying my face. "Because I have to say, Leah, as prisons go, this one's pretty spectacular." The question caught me off guard. Did I want to leave? Return to struggling paycheck to paycheck, worrying about Emma's future, fearing what might happen if we got sick or couldn't make rent? "I want a choice," I said finally. "I want to stay because I decide to, not because I'm manipulated into it." Tanya nodded slowly. "That's fair. But maybe see where this goes. I mean, the guy clearly wants you both in his life, and Emma deserves to know her father, right?" Before I could respond, Sophia appeared to show Tanya the grounds and her new accommodations in the guest house. Left alone with Emma, I considered my friend's perspective. Was I being unnecessarily resistant? Would giving this arrangement a genuine chance be so terrible? At 11, I found Alessio in the library as instructed, Emma napping peacefully in the pram I'd wheeled in. He stood by one of the tall windows, speaking quietly on his phone, his back to me. The morning sunlight silhouetted his powerful frame, reminding me of the first time I'd seen him in the hotel bar, commanding, magnetic, dangerous in ways I couldn't then define. He ended his call as I entered, turning to face me. "Thank you for coming." As if I had a choice. "You said we needed to talk." He gestured to a seating area where a tea service had been arranged. "Please." I settled into one of the leather armchairs, positioning the pram where I could see Emma. Alessio sat across from me, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees, hands clasped. The posture made him appear almost vulnerable, though I knew better. "I've been unfair to you," he began, surprising me. "Bringing you here as I did, expecting immediate adjustment. It was necessary, but not ideal." "Necessary?" I echoed. His expression hardened slightly. "Yes, necessary. Your flight put both you and Emma at risk. My enemies would consider you valuable leverage. So this is about protection? I challenged. Partly, he acknowledged. But not entirely. He paused, selecting his words carefully. That night we spent together, more than I expected. It affected me. When I learned about Emma, it felt like fate. Fate, I repeated skeptically. You tracked me across state lines because of fate? A hint of a smile touched his lips. I tracked you because you're the mother of my child. I brought you here because I want more. My pulse quickened. More what? More time. More chances to know you. More opportunities to see if what I felt that night could grow into something lasting. His dark eyes held mine, intense and unwavering. I want us to be a real family, Leah. Not one bound by obligation or fear, but by choice. By affection. The sincerity in his voice caught me off guard. You have a strange way of showing affection, Alessio. Most men don't essentially kidnap women they're interested in. He didn't flinch at the accusation. Most men don't live in my world, with my responsibilities, my enemies. I did what was necessary to ensure your safety, while creating an opportunity for us to truly know each other. And if I don't develop the feelings you want, I pressed, what then? Then you remain Emma's mother, protected and provided for, he replied steadily. My daughter will know her father. You will want for nothing, but the potential for more remains your choice. It was the most direct acknowledgement he'd given that my feelings mattered in his grand plan. A small concession, perhaps, but significant. So what? We date? While I live in your home, dependent on your generosity, surrounded by your security, I couldn't keep the skepticism from my voice. That's hardly a balanced relationship, Alessio. He considered this, then reached into his pocket, withdrawing a small leather portfolio which he placed on the table between us. Open it. Cautiously, I did as instructed. Inside was a bank card, documentation for an account, and what appeared to be the deed to a property. An account in your name only, he explained, with funds sufficient to support you and Emma comfortably for several years, should you choose to leave. And a house, also in your name, in a secure neighborhood close enough for regular visits with Emma, but separate from my immediate household. I stared at the documents, stunned. Why are you giving me this? To balance the scales, he replied simply. To give you a genuine choice. Stay because you want to, not because you must. The gesture was unexpected and oddly moving. This doesn't change the fact that you brought us here by force. No, he agreed, that cannot be undone, but perhaps we can move forward differently. He leaned closer, his voice softening. Give me 6 months, Leah. 6 months to show you what life could be like for us. For you, me, and Emma, as a family. Get to know me beyond that one night, beyond my reputation. Then decide. And if I still want to leave after 6 months, then you take the accounts, the property, and we arrange shared custody of Emma. His expression remained steady, though something flickered in his eyes. Determination, perhaps, or the certainty that I wouldn't choose to leave. It was a better offer than I had any right to expect. Financial security, independence, a chance to make a decision without duress. Why? I asked, genuinely puzzled by his approach. You could simply keep us here. Your security makes escape nearly impossible. Alessio's eyes darkened. I could. But what would that achieve? A resentful mother for my child? A woman who views me only as her jailer? He shook his head. That is not the family I want for Emma, or for myself. Emma stirred in the pram, making small waking noises. Alessio rose first, reaching her before I could, lifting her with practiced ease. The tenderness with which this dangerous man held our daughter continued to confound my expectations. 6 months, he said, cradling Emma as she blinked sleepily up at him. Give us that chance, Leah. Looking at them together, father and daughter, connected by blood and already forming a bond, I realized I was out of reasons to resist. Not when this arrangement offered Emma security and a relationship with her father. Not when financial independence was now within my grasp. 6 months, I agreed cautiously, starting today. His smile, genuine, transformative, caught me off guard. For a moment, I glimpsed the man beneath the Mafia boss, the father beneath the fearsome reputation. It was that man who had captured my attention 16 months ago in a hotel bar, who had made me feel like the only woman in the world for one unforgettable night. "You won't regret this decision," he said, transferring Emma to my arms with a gentleness that belied his strength. As our hands brushed in the exchange, that familiar spark of electricity shot through me. The chemistry that had never quite died, despite everything. I pulled back quickly, unwilling to acknowledge the reaction. But Alessio noticed. Of course he noticed. His eyes darkened with satisfaction, and I realized that perhaps the most dangerous aspect of my 6-month agreement wasn't the Mafia boss who had claimed us. It was the treacherous part of me that still wanted him. The weeks that followed marked the strangest courtship imaginable. Alessio approached our agreement with the same intensity and focus he presumably applied to his business dealings. Each day brought some new gesture, some effort to integrate me further into his life, while respecting the boundaries I'd established. Mornings often found him with Emma, those precious early hours when she was most alert and curious. I would find them in the nursery or the gardens, Alessio speaking to her in both English and Italian, his deep voice gentle as he named objects, explained simple concepts, treated her 6-month-old responses as though they were profound observations. "She's learning 2 languages already," he explained when I questioned the practice. "Children's brains are remarkably adaptive. Bilingualism will come naturally to her." He was right, of course. By the time 2 months had passed, Emma clearly recognized certain words in both languages, turning her head when Alessio called Bambina as readily as when I said sweetheart. Our daughter thrived in this environment of constant attention and stimulation. She began sitting unassisted, reached for toys with increasing coordination, and developed a belly laugh that could melt the stoniest heart. Even Marco, the ever-serious security chief, couldn't resist smiling when Emma giggled at his keys jingling. My own adjustment proved more complicated. The luxury surrounding me, the clothes, the food, the sheer ease of life without financial worry, was seductive. Having Tanya nearby helped enormously. Her presence provided normality, friendship, a connection to my life before. She had taken to her role with surprising enthusiasm, genuinely enjoying the work and the generous compensation. "It's like we're living in a movie," she confided one afternoon, as we watched Emma playing on a blanket in the garden. "A really weird, glamorous movie where my best friend is dating the most dangerous man in Chicago." "We're not dating," I corrected automatically, though the distinction felt increasingly semantic. Tanya rolled her eyes. "Right. He just brings you fresh flowers every week, takes you to private dinners on the terrace, and looks at you like he wants to devour you whole. Totally not dating." I flushed, unable to deny the accuracy of her description. Alessio had been methodical in his pursuit, arranging intimate dinners where conversation flowed more easily than I'd expected, organizing outings to art galleries and music performances in private boxes where security could be guaranteed. Each experience revealed new facets of the man behind the feared Mafia boss, his genuine appreciation for classical music, his surprisingly deep knowledge of Renaissance art, his dry wit that emerged when he felt comfortable. Most unsettling were the moments when conversation turned to Emma, to parenthood, to family. In those discussions, the walls between us thinned, our shared concern for our daughter creating common ground that was difficult to dismiss. "My father was present but absent," he told me during one such evening, a rare glimpse into his past, in the house, but unreachable. "I won't be that kind of father to Emma." "What kind will you be?" I'd asked, genuinely curious. His eyes, warm with candlelight and good wine, held mine. "The kind who sees her, who listens, who teaches her strength without cruelty. The kind who makes her feel safe enough to fly." He'd paused, adding softly, "With your help." These glimpses of vulnerability, of the man beneath the power and danger, were what I found most difficult to resist. That, and the undeniable physical attraction that had only intensified with proximity and time. Alessio never pushed physical intimacy, never attempted to recapture the passion of our first night together. His touch remained carefully appropriate. A hand at my back, guiding me through a doorway, fingers brushing as he handed me a glass of wine, occasionally a chaste kiss on my cheek in greeting or good night. But his restraint only heightened the tension between us, the unspoken awareness that one word from me would change everything. 3 months into our arrangement, I found myself genuinely smiling more often, relaxing into the rhythm of this strange new life. Emma had begun crawling, exploring her world with determined energy that required constant vigilance. Her first tooth had appeared, accompanied by nights of fussing that Alessio insisted on sharing, taking turns walking the floors with her so I could rest. "You don't have to do this," I'd told him one night, finding him in the nursery at 2 a.m., pacing with Emma against his shoulder. "I want to," he'd replied simply. In the dim nightlight, with his usual impeccable appearance softened by fatigue, he looked almost ordinary. Just a father comforting his child. Almost. The 4th month brought changes beyond our household. Alessio began including me in certain social functions, carefully selected gatherings where his associates and their wives welcomed me with curious deference. At these events, Alessio was openly affectionate, his arm around my waist, introducing me with pride as Emma's mother, with a tone that implied much more. "They all think we're together," I observed after one such evening, as we returned to the estate in his car. "Aren't we?" he countered, his eyes reflecting the passing streetlights, perhaps not in every way, but in the ways that matter most. I couldn't argue. We shared a home, a child, increasingly a life. The only line remaining uncrossed was the physical one, and even that boundary had begun to feel arbitrary, a last stand of resistance that made less sense with each passing day. That night, standing outside my bedroom door after he'd walked me upstairs, something shifted. Perhaps it was the wine we'd shared, or the way the evening had flowed so naturally, or simply the culmination of 4 months of careful courtship. Whatever the cause, when he leaned in to place his customary goodnight kiss on my cheek, I turned my head slightly, meeting his lips with mine. The kiss began gently, a question more than a demand. But when my hands lifted to his chest, not to push him away, but to feel his heartbeat racing beneath my fingers, something unleashed in him. His arms encircled me, pulling me against him as the kiss deepened, became hungry, desperate with 4 months of restraint finally broken. When we separated, both breathing heavily, his eyes were dark with desire and something more complex. Triumph, relief, genuine emotion. "Leah," he murmured, his voice rougher than I'd ever heard it. I should have stepped back, should have maintained the boundary I'd held for so long. Instead, I reached for his hand and drew him into my room, closing the door behind us. That night echoed our first together, yet differed in fundamental ways. Where our initial encounter had been driven by immediate attraction between strangers, this one carried the weight of shared history, of our daughter sleeping peacefully down the hall, of 4 months of carefully building trust. His touch was both familiar and new, his whispered words in Italian and English washing over me as we rediscovered each other. Afterward, lying in his arms as moonlight filtered through the curtains, I finally asked the question that had lingered since the beginning. Why me? With all the women you could have chosen, why was I the one you couldn't let go? Alessio was quiet for a long moment, his fingers tracing patterns on my bare shoulder. "That night at the hotel," he finally said, "I was there for business, a meeting that ended badly. I was angry, preoccupied. Then you appeared at my table, and everything else faded." His hand moved to my cheek, turning my face toward his. "You looked at me without fear, without agenda. You saw me, not my name, or my reputation, or my wealth, just me." "I didn't know who you were," I reminded him. "Exactly." His smile held a trace of sadness. "It was liberating. When I learned about Emma, it felt like a second chance I didn't deserve but desperately wanted, a chance for something real." The sincerity in his voice, in his eyes, undid something in me, the last knot of resistance, perhaps. I realized with startling clarity that I was falling in love with Alessio Vitale, not despite who he was, but because of the man I'd discovered beneath the fearsome exterior. The final 2 months of our agreement transformed our household. Alessio moved into my suite, though he maintained his separate office and occasionally spent nights away on business I still knew little about. True to his word, he kept the darker aspects of his world away from Emma and me, creating a sanctuary within the larger fortress of his estate. Emma's first birthday approached, and with it, the end of our 6-month arrangement. The date loomed with unspoken significance. Would I choose to leave, Take the financial security Alessio had provided and establish a separate life? Or would I stay, fully embracing this family we'd created? The decision crystallized one evening in late autumn. Emma had taken her first unsteady steps that afternoon, tottering from my hands to Alessio's outstretched arms, both of us cheering her accomplishment with ridiculous enthusiasm. After she'd been put to bed, exhausted from her new mobility, Alessio and I stood on the terrace, watching the sunset paint the gardens in gold and amber. 6 months are almost up, he said quietly, his arm around my waist. I leaned into him, feeling the solid warmth of his body against mine. Yes. Have you decided? His voice remained steady, but I felt the tension in his shoulders. Turning to face him, I studied the face that had become so dear to me. The strong lines, the penetrating eyes that softened when they looked at Emma, the mouth that could issue deadly commands or whisper tender words against my skin. I thought of the man who had pursued me across state lines, who had claimed us with possessive certainty, who had then shown the patience and wisdom to step back and give me a genuine choice. I'm staying, I said simply. We're staying. The relief that washed over his features was almost painful to witness. You're certain? The house, the accounts, they're still yours, regardless. I don't need them, I replied. I'm choosing this. Choosing you. He drew me closer, his forehead resting against mine. I have something to ask you, then. Before I could respond, he reached into his pocket and withdrew a small velvet box. Opening it revealed a ring of breathtaking beauty, a large oval diamond surrounded by smaller stones, set in platinum that caught the fading sunlight. This was my mother's, he said softly. Before her, my grandmother's. It belongs to the Vitale matriarch. His eyes held mine, more vulnerable than I'd ever seen them. Will you wear it, Leah? Will you be my wife? Not in name only, but in truth. Will you help me raise our daughter, build our family, create something lasting? The ring glittered between us, heavy with history and meaning. I thought of the journey that had brought us here, from a chance meeting in a hotel bar to a night that created Emma, from fear and flight to this moment of choice. In accepting, I would be embracing not just Alessio, but his world, his legacy, his name. Yes, I whispered, surprising myself with the certainty I felt. Yes, I will. As he slipped the ring onto my finger, a perfect fit, as if it had been made for me, Alessio smiled with a joy so pure it transformed him. Ti amo, cara mia, he murmured, the words sincere and powerful. From that first night, in ways I never expected. I have loved you. I love you too, I replied, realizing the truth of it in my bones. Despite everything, because of everything. 6 months earlier, I had fled in terror from this man, taking our daughter to escape what I perceived as a threat. Now I stood willingly in his arms, having discovered that what I had feared most had become what I wanted most, a family, a future, a love that had begun in the most unlikely circumstances. Emma's cry through the baby monitor interrupted the moment, making us both laugh softly. Together? Alessio asked, taking my hand, the diamonds of my new ring catching the last rays of sunset. Together, I agreed, following him inside to our daughter. As we entered the nursery where Emma stood in her crib, arms outstretched toward us, I realized that what had begun as captivity had transformed into the freest choice I'd ever made. The Mafia boss who had once claimed us with cold authority, "You and the child are mine," had earned those words in ways neither of us could have imagined. Now, as Emma babbled happily, reaching for both her parents, I understood the truth. We were his, yes, but more importantly, he was ours.